Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC Orlando Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland just ended, and this is going to be my UFC Fight Night Orlando post-fight. I'm mainly going to discuss the main event, but I'm also going to discuss the other notable fights on the main card. Starting off with the main event, you had Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland. When this fight was originally announced, I wasn't happy that it was a main event. I understood that it was a fun fight, but I felt like it was just Wonderboy kind of keeping his ranking hostage, and it was Kevin Holland, who can't grapple with anyone, basically, getting a fight against a top 10 guy solely based on stepping in on 24 hours notice to fight Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 279. So I kind of hated it as a main event, but this fight absolutely delivered, and it kind of makes me want to take that back a little bit, even though all my complaints were legitimate. But when this fight was originally announced, my early prediction was Wonderboy Thompson. And after thinking about it, I started to lean Kevin Holland. And I just said, Wonderboy's getting old. He's slowing down. He's almost 40 years old. He hasn't won a fight since 2019. But then, about a week before the fight, I start watching some tape on their recent fights. And I started watching some of Wonderboy's performances against other strikers. And then I said, you know what? I promised myself I wasn't picking any more of these guys who were on the downslopes of their career, who were getting up there in age. But what I saw was a far superior striker in Wonderboy Thompson. So I picked Wonderboy Thompson by decision. He ends up winning via 4th round TKO. Kevin Holland broke his hand at some point in the 1st or 2nd round, was getting beat up badly in the 4th round, and his corner decides to stop it. Now, before I get into discussing, round by round, kind of what happened, shout out to Kevin Holland's corner. I could not be happier. I know there's going to be some people complaining. He could have fought and they could have went to a decision. By the time we got through the 3rd and 4th round, this competitive fight turned into a one-sided beatdown for Wonderboy Thompson. He dominated the 3rd and 4th round, in my opinion. And Holland was clearly injured. He had a broken hand, or bare minimum a compromised hand of some sort. And he's taken a lot of damage. Why trot him out there for a 5th round when he's just lost the last 3 rounds and he's going to lose no matter what? Why give him more brain damage and potentially worsening the injury? So I am so happy that his corner decided to stop the fight. I cannot, stress that enough. I am so tired of fighters being trotted out, just for the fact of just being out there. They're clearly losing the fight. They're being dominated. They're taking a lot of brain damage. It's just kind of a black eye on the sport, and it doesn't happen enough where corners step in, and the referees are tentative to step in, the doctors are tentative to step in. So shout out to his corner. So round by round, how did this fight go down? First round, very competitive. Wonderboy was landing the left hand at will. He was landing good side kicks to the body. Kevin Holland was landing some good leg kicks, and he landed a nasty right hand that hurt Wonderboy. Tried to swarm him. Wonderboy was able to kind of survive. He clinched up for a little bit. Holland landed some good strikes, but Wonderboy eventually circled out and then went back to doing what he was doing. The first round, I think, is 50-50. You look at all 3 judges' scorecards after the fact. They had the last 3 rounds, rounds 2, 3, and 4 for Wonderboy, and they had the first round for Kevin Holland. I think that's more than a fair scorecard. I think Kevin Holland probably won that round just because he rocked Wonderboy Thompson, even though I think Wonderboy Thompson landed the more impactful strikes outside of that one punch from Kevin Holland. I hope that makes sense. So I would have probably gave that first round to Kevin Holland, but I think it could have went either way just because of how many left hands, hard left hands, Wonderboy landed. But then you get the second round. Wonderboy, same thing. And Wonderboy wasn't just sitting back and waiting to counterstrike. He was also rushing forward and throwing combinations. He was landing good leg kicks, good side kicks to the body, mixing in the head kicks. And I think it was in the second round where Wonderboy landed like 1 or 2 heavy head kicks where Kevin Holland only blocked with his hand. And the head kick still partially landed. And I wonder, could that be what broke the hand of Kevin Holland? We may never know. Someone may find it on video. But supposedly in that 1st or 2nd round, Kevin Holland broke his hand. Kevin Holland was just looking to close the distance, looking to use the reach advantage as well, because he can find Wonderboy Thompson as he's trying to circle away from him and just kind of flailing with wild punches. And he wasn't having a lot of success outside of that heavy right hand he landed in the first round. His leg kicks were his best weapon in this fight. He was landing some good leg kicks. 3rd round starts up. Wonderboy mixing in the head kicks, landing wheel kicks, landing head kicks. There was a clinch, there were some clinch positions in this third round where Wonderboy was rushing forward and then Kevin Holland would clinch and then they'd end up in the clinch. But it was like neither guy wanted to really throw any strikes in the clinch, and then they would just break and circle out and going back to doing what they were doing. It would be Kevin Holland kind of moving forward, Wonderboy circling, then Wonderboy would kind of step off the center line, pump a straight left, snap Kevin Holland's head back. But Kevin Holland was eating everything. These were hard strikes, and it didn't even appear as if Kevin Holland was rocked. So that's what's absolutely crazy. And then I wanted to mention, I forgot about the second round. There was a weird position where Wonderboy kind of rushed forward in the second round, and they ended up on the ground. Kevin Holland kind of got a scrambly takedown. I don't know what to call it. This happened in the second and third, and Kevin Holland stood up both times and let Wonderboy up. So the third round, Wonderboy really starts to put it on Kevin Holland, really starts to beat him up, really starts to land the kicks, side kicks to the body, leg kicks, head kicks, wheel kicks, hook kicks, question mark kicks, and everything is like finding a home. And Kevin Holland's not throwing his, left hand at all, and, just continues to just get beat up by Wonderboy Thompson time and time again. Fourth round, Wonderboy kind of more of the same. Wonderboy actually rocked him with a combination in this round, started to swarm him. They clinched. There was a punch to kind of the stomach belt line area. Kevin Holland said it was a groin strike. For a second, Dan Miragliotta waved off the fight, but then he realized it was a groin strike and let it continue. Was it a groin strike? I'm never going to sit here and say, oh, this wasn't a groin strike or this was. It didn't appear to be a groin strike, and usually I say, okay, well, they react right away. Kevin Holland had a delayed reaction, but I don't know. Are people really going out there and faking groin strikes for the fun of it? I'm gonna err on the side of Kevin Holland got hit in the groin, and it's just because it's the illusion because some of these fighters have their pants pulled up so high, so then it looks like it's in the belt line, but it's really a low blow. They stopped the fight momentarily. Then Wonderboy, as soon as they started back up, Wonderboy's going on the attack, just spamming head kicks. Non-stop. Wonderboy spamming head kicks. At one point, and I think this might have been before the groin shot, I can't remember now. So much happened in this fight. It was a crazy, wild fight. Wonderboy, when he almost finished Kevin Holland, followed him to the ground, threw a couple punches, but then let him back up and then proceeded, to land those head kicks over and over and over again. They go into the corner in between rounds, and Kevin Holland's corner stops it, which again, shout out to them. I couldn't be happier for them. There is a narrative that's going to come out of this fight that if Kevin Holland would have just wrestled, he would have won this fight. And I think that narrative is completely false. I think that Wonderboy would have potentially scrambled back to his feet. Those were only, 2 rounds where Kevin Holland got him down. And I get, you could say, oh, well, Kevin Holland won the first round if he would have won the second and third by holding him down. We don't know that he would have been able to hold Wonderboy down. I know there's going to be some people saying, well, Wonderboy's terrible grappler. Kevin Holland's not an elite level wrestler either, okay? So we don't know for a fact that he would have held Wonderboy down anyway. So people saying that, I think it's really stupid. But Wonderboy showed tonight that he is still one of the best when fighting a striker. Now, if you wrestled in middle school, if you wrestled in elementary school or high school, Wonderboy's not going to fight you. He's going to flat out refuse to fight you because he does not want to fight grapplers, even though he says he's still trying to fight for a title. But if you put Wonderboy Thompson against a striker within the division, he is still one of the best. His speed looked amazing for 40. His head movement looked good. His footwork looked good. Avoided a lot of shots from Kevin Holland. Now, Kevin Holland did land some jabs. He landed that right hand in the first round. He landed some decent shots. There was a headbutt that kind of busted Wonderboy open. He was bleeding from the eyebrow, bleeding from the nose. But Wonderboy looked so good in this fight. And the one thing the commentators said that really rubbed me the wrong way, they said this may be fight of the year. Why are we embellishing everything? The first and second round were competitive, mainly the first round. The rest of the fight was a dominant performance by Wonderboy. How are we saying this is fight of the year? What are we doing here? But Kevin Holland showed that he's a good striker, but against the elite of the elite and striker like Wonderboy Thompson, unless he finds a way to land that knockout blow, he's just not going to be able to keep up with a guy like Wonderboy Thompson. And, it's tough because where does Kevin Holland go from here? He can't grapple either. And I know people are going to say he's improving and he's scrambling and all this and he's strong and blah, blah, blah. He's not grappling with the likes of Khamzat Chimaev. We've already seen that. He's not grappling with the likes of Leon Edwards or Colby Covington. He's not grappling with the likes of Gilbert Burns. So where does he go from here? Now he can't strike with the likes of Wonderboy Thompson. Where does he go? Maybe Kevin Holland, Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal has been ducking every matchup that looks bad for him. Maybe a Kevin Holland fight appeals to him. Another striker matchup for Jorge Masvidal. I'm not sure what's next for Kevin Holland. I'm assuming he's going to stay at welterweight. This was a fun performance for the most part. I think people are going to look back on this a little bit more fondly than they probably should. I enjoyed the fight, don't get me wrong. But, this 50% of the fight was a one-sided beating, in my opinion, okay? And, it is what it is. It was a fun first 2 rounds. But Wonderboy Thompson just showed his head movement, his footwork, his striking. I mean, he was firing that straight left and landing at will. Kevin Holland showed an amazing chin because I don't know how he didn't get KO'd by some of these hook kicks, by some of these head kicks that landed. I mean, Wonderboy was literally spamming them. And they were fast, too. I am shocked at the speed of Wonderboy. I cannot believe the speed at the age 40. And I think a lot of people forgot. I still knew he was a very good striker, but a lot of people forgot because we've only seen him fight grapplers for the last few years. And I understand that he's frustrated. I wouldn't mind seeing that Shavkat Rakhmonov fight. Shavkat is not like a Khamzat Chimaev where all he's looking for is a takedown. Shavkat is very well-rounded. And if Shavkat beats Jeff Neal, I know it kind of wouldn't make sense then, but that's the fight the UFC was trying to put together for a while there, and Wonderboy didn't want it. I would like to see that. I actually tweeted this out, and this is a real possibility as well. I think Colby Covington may be sneaking out of his safe house and preparing to leave witness protection just so he can call out a 40-year-old Wonderboy Thompson after this performance, because we know what would happen in that fight. But I don't necessarily want to see that. Wonderboy's kind of said, I don't want to fight grapplers anymore, but he said he wants to fight for a title, so I don't know where he really goes from here. Maybe he can fight Michel Pereira. I think Pereira may have a fight. I can't remember, but that's still fighting back in the rankings. You got to win over Kevin Holland. Let's be real. Wonderboy looked better than ever tonight. He fought a striker that was unranked. Okay, so let's pump the brakes a little bit on, Wonderboy's back in title contention. He beat an unranked guy who was just coming off a first-round stoppage loss. Let's be real about the performance. But it was good to see Wonderboy kind of back into his old ways. But that's what he can look like, if he's fighting another striker. And, there's some people saying maybe they do the Jorge Masvidal rematch. Jorge Masvidal don't want that fight. Wonderboy would beat him up again and beat him up badly. Jorge Masvidal, ever since that knee to Ben Askren, he thinks he has some leverage that he really doesn't have. And, saying, oh, I don't want to fight Gilbert Burns, like he's beneath me or something. Gilbert Burns is more of a top contender than Jorge Masvidal is. So I don't think Jorge Masvidal would take that fight. So maybe Wonderboy versus Michel Pereira, but outside of that, I don't really know. Colby Covington's probably going to be screaming from the rooftops he wants to fight him. But nonetheless, fun main event at UFC Orlando. Cool to see Wonderboy back in there throwing crazy kicks, spinning wheel kicks left and right. Stamina looked good. Also, I meant to mention in that 4th round, he was slamming body kicks on Kevin Holland. I mean, Wonderboy looked phenomenal tonight. So I'm really happy to see that performance from Wonderboy. It kind of sucks seeing a legend like Wonderboy, who's been around forever. He's a UFC veteran, and he's just been getting dominated in his last few fights. And I'm tired of seeing these veterans come in who've kind of made a name for themselves, and they kind of stay a little bit too long and get brutally KO'd. Wonderboy said he's going to continue to fight. This would be a hell of a performance to retire on, but he's not going to do that, so we'll see what happens in the future. Now, moving down the card, we're going to briefly talk about all the other notable fights on the main card. Bryan Barberena versus Rafael dos Anjos. 2nd round rear naked choke for Rafael dos Anjos. And this fight went about as expected for me. I picked Dos Anjos by decision. I thought Bryan Barberena was going to be very durable and hard to finish. Dos Anjos gets him down in the 1st round, controls him, almost gets an arm triangle in the 1st round. 2nd round, Bryan Barberena actually initiated the clinch. RDA eventually gets him down. Is controlling him on the ground. Bryan Barberena trying to scramble back to his feet. And sure enough, RDA ends up on his back and gets a rear naked choke. RDA then calls out Conor McGregor for July of 2023 and says, look, that gives you plenty of time to get the PEDs out of your system. And that's a fight that never happened. That's the fight that was supposed to happen back when Nate Diaz stepped in on short notice. RDA had to pull out with a foot injury. And that's a fight that has an incredible backstory. And also, it's a winnable fight for Conor McGregor. So do not be surprised if Dos Anjos is potentially fighting Conor McGregor in 2023. Now that Conor McGregor will have at least 6 months, 7 months to get all those PEDs out of his system. But this win doesn't really tell me much about Rafael Dos Anjos. He's at a point in his career where he's not going to contend for a belt anymore. We've seen his elite level grappling against guys who aren't the elite of the elite in grappling. Like we've seen Dos Anjos get out grappled by Khabib. We've seen him get out grappled by Usman, Leon Edwards, Colby Covington. But against guys who aren't that elite of the elite, Dos Anjos is able to out-grapple them. We've seen him do it to Renato Moicano, who's a pretty good grappler, pretty good jiu-jitsu guy. We've seen what he did to Brad Riddell. Bryan Barberena got taken down by Matt Brown, basically at will. What did we expect to happen against Rafael Dos Anjos? So a solid performance doesn't really mean all that much in the grand scheme of things, but that call-out afterwards may get him a money fight against Conor McGregor. Moving down the card, Matheus Nicolau versus Matt Schnell. Matheus Nicolau gets a second-round KO. This was a beautiful performance from Nicolau. Basically avoided everything from Schnell early on, was circling around, avoiding Schnell as he tried to pressure, pumping the jab, landing good counter shots. Eventually in the second round, I think he hurt him twice in the second round. I'm trying to remember now. But I think he hurt him twice in the second round, almost finished him, but then kind of took the foot off the gas and then continued to circle and look for the counter. Lands a nasty right hand. Schnell falls to the ground, and then Nicolau just proceeds to jump on him, kind of in like a back mount position where they're both on their knees, and just starts beating the crap out of Matt Schnell and eventually gets the TKO win. He said he's fought out his UFC contract. He's a top contender at flyweight. I'd like to see the UFC re-sign him. This was a good performance, but ultimately I think Matt Schnell came back too soon after that war against Sumadarji. So you got to take that into account. But Nicolau is going to be tough to beat. He's hard to track down. He's very good at lateral movement. His striking looks better than ever. He's pumping the jab. He's got good leg kicks. He's got power. He's got finishing ability. And he went out there and put on a masterclass performance. So I think the UFC will re-sign him. And it's hard to believe the UFC at one point was thinking about shutting down the UFC flyweight division. Good performance from Matheus Nicolau. Moving down the card, Tuivasa versus Sergei Pavlovich. This fight went exactly how I predicted. First round KO for Sergei Pavlovich. Tuivasa coming back too early after the Cyril Gane loss where he got brutally TKO'd. And then on top of that, Sergei Pavlovich with a massive reach advantage, a very technical striker, just moved forward, avoided the big shots of Tuivasa. Tuivasa was slinging back heavy punches, but Sergei Pavlovich was just avoiding those big shots and landing some of his own. And Tuivasa had every chance to try to survive this. I think he got sat down once. Then as he was getting up against the cage, he was getting just beat up with big shots. He got back to his feet, eventually gets clipped again, kind of sits down a little bit in a squatting position, gets hit with an uppercut, and then just crumples to the ground and gets finished off with ground and pound. Sergei Pavlovich is a legitimate contender within the heavyweight division. I am fantasizing about matchups against Curtis Blades, against Cyril Gane, against Francis Ngannou, against John Jones, against Tom Aspinall. You know, Sergei Pavlovich kind of hasn't been taken seriously. And I understand that Tuivasa has a little bit too much hype, at least in my opinion. Almost got finished by Greg Hardy not that long ago. But this is still a quality win for Sergei Pavlovich, and he didn't even get touched in this fight. He did not even get touched. The one leg kick that Tuivasa threw, Pavlovich addressed, because I talked about Pavlovich very heavy on that lead leg. Pavlovich never mixing the kicks himself. And Tuivasa threw a leg kick early. Pavlovich avoided it and immediately started closing the distance, throwing shots, slipping out of the way of the power punches of Tuivasa, and just absolutely brutalized him. And now Tuivasa been finished in his last two fights. I mean, talk about peaks and valleys in the MMA game. To go from surging and maybe on the cusp of a potential title shot with one more win to now he's been finished in two straight fights. He got absolutely brutalized, but Pavlovich was a horrible matchup for Tuivasa. And I know people like Tuivasa because, you know, he's this character, but you looked at both Pavlovich's skill set and Tuivasa's skill set, it was a nightmare matchup for him. And he ended up losing. He ended up getting brutalized. I would have liked to seen him sit out and wait and fight at UFC 284 in Perth, Australia. That would have been the plan. He just got finished by Cyril Gane a couple months ago. So now I'd like to see Tuivasa take some time off, come back against a winnable opponent, maybe spring, summer of next year, because, I mean, he was busted up badly. This fight only lasted 54 seconds, but he got busted up badly in this fight, bloody and just battered in 54 seconds. I'd like to see him take some serious time off. Moving down the card, Jack Hermanson versus Roman Dolidze. What a performance by Roman Dolidze. This was originally supposed to be Jack Hermanson versus Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson pulls out. Roman Dolidze steps in on, I think, a week's notice. I think he stepped in last week. Roman Dolidze loses the first round. Jack Hermanson landed good leg kicks. I think he even had a takedown in the first round as well, pumping the jab, landing some good shots. Delizae kind of plotting forward, looking to explode. Jack Hermanson goes up 10-9. Second round, more of the same. Jack Hermanson landed some good leg kicks, landed some good punches. Delizae catching him a couple times, but just trying to load up a little bit too flat-footed. Jack Hermanson using his footwork and just avoiding the shots of Roman Dolidze. Well, Jack Hermanson gets a beautiful takedown in the center of the cage. And Roman Dolidze immediately starts looking for submissions. He starts looking for arm bars. He starts looking for triangles. And in the first round, I forgot to mention, there was a crazy sweep by Roman Dolidze after he got taken down in the first round as well. So he did a crazy sweep. They both ended up back on their feet. Second round, Jack Hermanson, more of the same, gets him down again. But Roman Dolidze immediately starts looking for triangles, arm bars. Eventually ends up with a calf slicer that flattened out Jack Hermanson, and his leg was completely trapped behind the back of Jack Hermanson. Jack Hermanson completely flattened out. His toes are pointing towards the back of his head. Can't get out of the position, and Roman Dolidze just flattened out and just started ground and pounding him. And Jack was blocking some of them. He couldn't get out of the position. Referee gave him every chance. I think he gave him about 30, 45 seconds to get out of that position. Could not get out of the position. This is the first time I've ever seen this in MMA. This is going to be a new trick that maybe other people start evolving into their game. I've never seen this before. And it was a debilitating position for Jack Hermanson. And what a performance by Roman Dolidze to come in on short notice and do this. Incredible. And not only that, he's now propelled himself into the top 10 of the UFC middleweight division. That is insanity. That is straight up insanity. He's going to be ranked in the top 10. He beat a top 10 ranked fighter in Jack Hermanson. And Roman Dolidze now on a nasty winning streak. And to win like that, people are going to remember that. That was one of the best finishes I've seen in 2022. I get it wasn't super brutal. But the way he was able to, he was taken down and then find that calf slicer and end up on top, and Jack Hermanson just flattened out and just defenseless. I mean, incredible performance by Roman Dolidze. I'm curious to see who they match him up with next. Moving down the card, Eryk Anders versus Kyle Daukaus. I mean, what can you say about this fight? Kyle Daukaus, his body language after the first round was just, I want out of there. And Eryk Anders just beating him up and eventually finds the TKO in the second round. Kyle Daukaus didn't want to be in there after the first round. He got hurt with a headbutt in this fight. They stopped it. They let him recover. But, I mean, there was positions where he was just like laying on his knees after looking for a takedown. And then, after he didn't get the takedown, he was just standing there with his chin like straight up in the air, just waiting to get uppercutted. And, Kyle Daukaus, I don't know where he goes from here. Terrible performance tonight. He gets TKO'd by Eryk Anders. I think the TKO came off of, he was like diving in on a single leg, and Eryk Anders was beating him up to the side of the head. He was just hanging on to the single leg, and then eventually gets finished. Moving down the card, Niko Price versus Philip Rowe. This was supposed to be a prelim, but the prelims went over, so this ended up on the main card. We ended up with a 7-fight main card. Niko Price, coming back after an injury and a long layoff, looked terrible in this fight. But the third round was insane. Philip Rowe won the first 2 rounds. Landing the right hand, just being a little bit more technical striker. Niko Price was putting the pace on him, but just looked sloppy with the hands and looked slow and looked like he was fighting underwater. Third round, Philip Rowe kind of starting to slow down. And Niko Price goes after him, hurts him, ends up on the ground looking for the finish. I thought it was going to be stopped with elbows. Somehow Philip Rowe survives. And now Niko Price is completely exhausted. Philip Rowe hurts him and then swarms him for the finish up against the fence, just beats him up with punches, and the referee jumps in. Niko Price complained about the stoppage a little bit. It was a perfectly fair stoppage. It was over. Niko Price gets TKO'd in the third round. It was kind of sad, this performance from Niko Price. I get it, Philip Rowe looked pretty good. He faced adversity, he came back. This performance from Niko Price, I really don't know what to say about it, honestly, because he just looks so slow. But we're going to chalk it up to he's coming back after a long layoff. He had injuries, and I think both knees they mentioned on the broadcast. He had knee pads on both knees, but the striking just looked very slow. What does this do for Philip Rowe? I don't know. I don't know. It showed that he can face some adversity and come back. It can show that, you know, he has decent stamina, I guess, even though he slowed down in the third round. He was able to get a finish in the third round. I'm just happy Philip Rowe won because it was the Stuart Scott night, kind of the V Foundation stuff, and they were playing all these cancer stories, and Philip Rowe's mother has cancer. And the last thing I wanted was another Mike Grundy situation, you know, that we saw at UFC London, where they talked about his terminally ill father, and then he got finished in the first round. MMA is a cruel game, so I'm happy Philip Rowe won, but I don't know where he goes from here. But he got a solid performance. He faced adversity. He came back and finished Niko Price in the third round. And overall, this was a solid card. I really enjoyed UFC Orlando. It was weird having, you know, Tuivasa, Sergei, Pavlovich, like the fourth fight down. That probably should have been a co-main event. But nonetheless, it was an enjoyable fight card. I enjoyed UFC Fight Night Orlando. The main event, I kind of walk it back a little bit because I did enjoy watching Wonderboy versus Kevin Holland. But at the same time, I still don't think either guy is going to be relevant at the top of the division in any time in the near future. So let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.